Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eric. I'm the founder of Rapid Flow. At Rapid Flow, we do everything we can to make you faster in the studio. Welcome to my review of one of the most important pieces of gear that I have in the studio, the Dangerous Music Source. It's sitting right here on my desk. But yeah, what in essence looks like a very simple device is actually absolutely crucial to how I work. And if you've been following the channel, you will know that I only review devices that I actively use in my studio and that I can 100% recommend. And the reason why I want to share this with you is because this monitor controller has been a revelation for me. This is a collaboration with Dangerous Music and their distributor, who was kind enough to replace the one that I had personally because it had gotten a bit old and dusty and the pots needed to be replaced, etc. So they were super cool, and in return for this video, they sent me a new device. I'm sharing with you my honest opinion of this device, and it happens to be that I think this device is amazing. So the very first time I connected the Dangerous Source that I used to have, it was a used unit that I bought, and even though the pots were a little bit scratchy, I immediately, when I hooked it up and played music through it the first time, I was blown away by how incredibly detailed, punchy, loud it sounded. And the only time I'd heard a monitor controller sound this way before was when I was running Mytek 192.8 converters into an Avocet Crane song. And if you know anything about this kind of high-end gear, that is a very expensive monitoring and conversion setup. Now, the cool thing about the Dangerous Source is that it achieves that quality of audio and precision in your monitoring and in your headphone mix at a price that I think is more than reasonable. I think right now this is being sold for around 1,300 euros. And that may seem like a lot for a monitor controller, but the first time you connect this thing to your computer and switch it on, you're gonna know exactly why. I personally will no longer mix without it. I wouldn't even think of replacing it because I have not ever heard a monitor controller sound this good at this price point. And I've owned like everything. Like I used to work in music shops, so I had access to anything. I started out with the Samsung C Control, super low end, upgraded to a Persona Central Station. Of course, I owned a Mackie Big Knob, like all of us at some point seem to have done. And I had various devices in my career of producing music. And every time when you step up, you realize how important your monitoring chain is. But it wasn't until I connected this that I realized that I could have the quality of the Mytek converter and the Avocet at a fraction of the price. And I sold those devices a long time ago when I moved house. So this is something that I wanted to share with you because I just think it's so amazing. So let's talk a little bit about one of the things about it that makes it so cool and why the audio quality you get is so incredible. If I switch around here now, I can show you that the way I'm running this right now is via AES SPDIF. In my case, it's actually an SPDIF feed coming off of my converter. So I'm sending a clone of the left-right signal in the quantum converter via SPDIF, via digital cable, into the SPDIF or AES input. It's a combined jack. And this is a really, really critical point. And this is something that I cannot highlight enough. I actually fully underestimated what a difference it makes if you send your signal from your converter to your monitor controller digitally or analog. It's a huge difference if the conversion happens in the monitor controller and there's like a very short little path etched onto a circuit board than if you're sending it even with quite high-end cables from your converter analog into there. It still also does sound really good if you do send stuff in analog, but if you can send stuff in SPDIF, it's just like, whoa, you're basically cutting out a huge cable run and making sure that the signal that the monitor controller is getting is pretty much as pure as it can get it. And of course, you're using the converters that are in the Dangerous Source. And the converters in this are absolute mastering grade, really high fidelity converters. They go up to 24 bits, 192 kilohertz. And I was actually looking at tech specs before I started this video. It's really impressive how well this thing is engineered. And I'm going to link to a video here of someone that took apart this thing that knows way more about signal paths than I do. It's a really well-produced video, and you can see exactly how they take it apart, and this person is blown away by the engineering that has gone into this device. But coming back to the tech specs of the Dangerous Source, I always think it's a It's a really great point when manufacturers publish these specs, easy to find. And as you can see, it's like plus minus 0.5 dB. What am I saying? Minus 0.5 dB from 10 hertz to 80 kilohertz. I mean, that's an insanely flat, very, very high extending frequency response. The total harmonic distortion is amazing also at the point that it's at. The intermodulation distortion is super low also. Crosstalk rejection is also a great value, as is noise. And more importantly, I'm sure you can find gear out there that has, different values that may seem better. So more important really than just the tech specs, and I'm sure there are converters now and stuff that you can find that may have, better specs on paper. But the point with the dangerous music stuff is that the way it's been designed, it's really been designed in a way that it sounds incredible, but also very, very true to the source. I've compared this to different kinds of converters. As you may know, I have PreSonus quantum converters, which are really quite good. And then I do also have Prism Orpheus converters in the studio, and there's nothing that I think is missing. I mean, these converters sound a little bit more neutral. From a quality point of view, they're mastering grade converters as they've described. So if you send an AES SPDIF or SPDIF signal, will be most likely from a consumer grade, sort of mid-grade interface into this, and use this to convert your signals going to your speakers, you're going to have a massive upgrade in the quality. And plus, depending on the routing your interface can do, you can actually use those two in-out interfaces for other stuff, like maybe sending to an external effects loop or stuff like that. So if you're looking to really upgrade your monitor path massively, I can absolutely recommend this. And many shops these days offer you return policy where you can try stuff out for a month and then send it back if you're not happy. I can promise you that if you have the funds available to try out this device in their studio, unless you're using super high grade converters and a monitor controller and probably very expensive cables, you're not going to send this thing back. It sounds that clean and that punchy and that present, and it takes so much guesswork. It's like taking, as the proverbial way of saying it, it's like taking a blanket off of your mix and just being able to really peer into it in detail. The left-right imaging and the phantom center at the middle between the speakers is among the best I've ever heard in any price range. So I know I'm ranting about this device, but it's incredible how it sounds. And if you want to do a massive upgrade to your monitoring chain, I cannot recommend this high enough. It has a whole bunch of really smart functionality built in also, beyond just the fact that it sounds very natural, very neutral, but it also has stuff where you can go into this setup mode and choose how your speakers and headphones inputs, etc., are going to react. So I've now set it up so that it toggles instead of does only one at a time. So as you can see now, I can toggle between sources. You can also go back and use it in a way that the sources add up, which is like the way that I actually normally use it. So you can see it's going through its logic now, and you can now actually select multiple sources at the same time and also select multiple speakers at the same time. Let's assume now that you have a subwoofer hooked up to speaker 2. You can also use this in a toggle mode without changing the setup, which means if you hold it and then let go, if you're holding it for a second or longer, it'll actually function like a toggle. Now, it has a lot of other smart engineering. On the back plate, you will see that it has 2 analog inputs, and then the digital input and a USB input. And now the USB input may be something that you go like, yeah, nah, so what? But actually it's another exactly the same quality mastering grade converter that has been put on this device. And I use the USB input all the time. Like basically my laptop runs into that, and I use that to reference stuff, to listen to YouTube videos if I'm streaming stuff. And it's so nice to be able to listen to the stuff coming off of your operating system in a super high quality. So it's like it's huge to have this USB connector going through a mastering grade converter, so that anything you listen to in your studio, even if it's not your DAW, is actually also something that is being converted at a very, very high standard. Yeah, the analog inputs, of course, are, where you would normally send stuff. Like, for example, I have my mixer connected there so I can listen to my mixer without conversion. But there is also the possibility to connect an 8-inch jack, which is what people used to do when iPhones still had headphone jacks out. I mean, there's ways to use them still. There's little converters for iPhones and stuff. So that small mini jack is practical for some uses. But since most iPhones, or any iPhones coming out these days, unfortunately don't have a physical connection anymore, it's a bit tricky. But it's nice to have it there for certain things. I do use it sometimes to monitor off of my iPhone, but I have a separate converter for it. But that's a different story. The combined XLR jack input is what you would normally use in the studio. It has 2 headphone outputs. The headphone is massively powerful. You can get really, really loud with it, so do be careful with your ears. What's super nice is when you switch stuff in and out, there's no clicks and pops. There's nothing there that hurts you when you're clicking, so you can see how well it is designed. Same when you're switching between speakers and adding speakers. It's really clean and functions the way. Actually, what's the coolest thing about this device? It is completely unobtrusive in the way it operates. It just does what you want it to do. Sounds amazing in a sense that it sounds really clean and true to the source. Doesn't take anything away. I think one of the mottos Dangerous Music is using is sacrifice nothing, and it absolutely applies. And it's just like a reliable piece of hardware that never gets in the way, that always gives you exactly what you're doing. And I've definitely experienced a betterment of my mixes and masters since I started using this in my studio. Some people I've read online complain that it's an old design. I think it's by now it's a little over 10 years old, and that there must be better converters and stuff out there. Honestly, I've tried so many different kinds of conversion, and this is up in the very top 5% of things that I've heard, even if the design is a little bit older. That doesn't say anything about the subjective audio quality that you can get from a device, even if the converters that are being used are maybe not whatever is the hottest new thing right now. A good sounding audio circuit is a good sounding audio circuit, and I can say that it keeps up with some of the very, very high-end things that are out on the market right now. One final tip, something cool that you can do with it. You could theoretically use the USB input or the AES as a conversion path, as an additional mastering grade converter in your studio, because the device also has a line out, which is, I think it was originally intended to send maybe to a meter in your studio, or maybe to a recorder that's in the corner just tracking everything you're doing. It's not affected by the volume controller, which means that depending on how you route things through this, and these two guys are fully independent by the way, you could be running audio into your headphone source through USB, and then running the speaker source as an AES SPDIF, which are two completely separate converters that the device has inside, and actually have access to a pair of super high grade converters that are just being sent straight to XLR output. So it's hugely flexible, this device. It's great that you can monitor different things on headphone as the source. Since I mostly work alone in the studio, I don't use that often, but it's nice to have the option. And the device is actually small enough that you could theoretically travel with it. I mean, that's I think one of its design intention was that it was a very high grade monitoring solution that you can travel with. So it's roughly the size of a MacBook Air, and it just hooks up to MacBook. It's class compliant, so to OS X you just stick a USB cable in and it's just running. With PC you do need to install a driver, to my knowledge, but yeah, nothing major. And the latency is pretty low. If I switch from the SPDIF input to the USB input and use the so-called XMOS driver, which is what it's using on Ableton, it's fully possible to work with this in a production context. So yes, this is the Dangerous Music source and my review of it. I think a device that's easy to overlook and perhaps underestimate. Yeah, as I've shared with you, this is by far one of the best sounding monitor controllers that I'm aware of, at a price point that is it's like a third of what you would expect to pay for this kind of conversion and precision in your monitoring chain. So if you're looking to upgrade your game, this is something I can absolutely recommend. I hope that this review has been helpful for you, and that if you do decide to go this way, or if you own a dangerous source, then please leave a comment below and share your experience with it. And a big thanks to Mastering Works, Dangerous Music's distributor in Europe. Stefan, thanks a lot for basically taking my old unit, fixing that up, and giving me a fresh unit to work with. It's much appreciated. And yeah, I'm gonna get back to making some music, and check out the video that's coming to your screen now, which are 10 essential techniques that I think every audio mixer and producer should know. And I will see you on the next video. Bye bye.